Good morning, my name is Josh from Cyclones Oz and welcome to your detailed forecast update for January 3rd, 2024. We have a lot to get through today, including severe thunderstorms forecast across the far north of Queensland, showers and storms along the southeastern corners of Queensland as well, and the general weather forecast, of course, for eastern Australia. We've got a tropical low expected to develop offshore from Western Australia, heatwave conditions extending across interior Australia, and a very interesting rainfall pattern that's expected to develop next week for New South Wales, Victoria, and parts of southeastern Queensland. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Now let's get stuck straight into things. We're going to start things off this morning up in far north Queensland, but you can skip around to the time of the video that it suits you the best down in the channel description with timestamps listed at the bottom of the description. But let's get stuck, like I said, straight up in the far north of Queensland, where there are some heavy showers currently occurring offshore, especially up into the Daintree rainforest, and you can see those, if we flick it back to the radar imagery actually, you can see those heavier showers just starting to stick around offshore from the Daintree rainforest. Now this is the stuff that we get concerned about that can drop some really significant rainfall accumulations. Thankfully that these showers aren't actually located over any major population centre, but you can see towards the south of Port Douglas right now these stagnant and stationary showers dropping about 100 millimetres an hour. Pretty intense rainfall that is, even for far north Queensland, and especially considering that they are more or less completely stationary. There's really not much movement in these showers. This is where we get quite concerned for in terms of heavy rainfall. Now this is the stuff that we're going to see continue to fire up throughout the course of today. As the day rolls on, we're going to see more and more convection blow up into interior parts of far north Queensland, especially around the Atherton Tablelands and then further north up towards Mount Carbine and Laura outside of Cooktown and Port Douglas. Now these thunderstorms that will fire up, they're possible, do go severe warned, and as you can see with the forecast as we play it throughout the course of today, there are going to be some strong ones, especially outside of the Daintree rainforest, and some good ones between Mareeba, Atherton and Cairns. In fact, this little area, this kind of corridor between Mareeba, Atherton and then across towards Cairns, just in this little pocket here, has produced some great thunderstorms over the past week, and it looks like it is going to continue to produce for a while to come. And you can see on the convective forecast models here some substantial thunderstorms expected to make the most of the environment up there this afternoon, and we're likely to see these thunderstorms fire up. It's slow moving to start with, but they will get a little bit of motion going through, and whether they're heading towards the north, the northeast and the northwest, still a little bit uncertain on that. I reckon the ones that fire up around the Atherton area will head at least temporarily towards the northeast, and then the ones further up the coastline will likely head a little bit more towards the northwest. They'll be slow moving nonetheless, and as such, heavy rainfall is certainly a big threat with these thunderstorms. And normally the convective forecast models do a crap job at predicting exactly how much rainfall is expected, but they can give you an idea of the intensity that could come through in some of these thunderstorms. Unfortunately, it looks like they're doing a crap job this morning, but in terms of peak rainfall accumulations from these thunderstorms, you can see 70 millimetres fall in just a matter of minutes up in the far north of Queensland. These are true tropical downpours that come through. Mareeba yesterday picked up about 40 millimetres in I think just 20 minutes. It was some very heavy stuff, and they've been picking up some good rainfall as well over the past week. Some great falls have been reported here and there as well along the far northern areas of Queensland, especially along the Cassowary coast. Not so much outside of the Daintree rainforest. It looks like it might be their turn tonight, with peak rainfall accumulation suggested to be about 110 millimetres on this forecast. Definitely on the bullish side, but it does give you an idea that the rainfall is going to be very heavy from the thunderstorms that this trough is going to be firing up. And it's a similar forecast as well to what we're going to be seeing tomorrow afternoon, just a little bit less intense. There's expected to be more showers into the scene tomorrow afternoon by the looks of things. We'll likely see a little bit more kind of steady to persistent rainfall along the far northern Queensland coastline, but tomorrow afternoon, you can see it here on the other forecast models, we're likely to see this thunderstorm pattern turn into more showers, but we will also see some good thunderstorms up into the far north of Queensland tomorrow afternoon and evening, and the same deal with Sunday as well, heading up further towards the Daintree rainforest and then deeper into the Cape York Peninsula, more showers streaming ashore. But by the looks of things, with the southeasterly breeze, it's going to be bringing in a lot of moisture from the Coral Sea. We're likely to see a couple of days of persistent showers for locations between Ingham right up to about Cooktown, and depending on where you are, some of those showers could be pretty heavy, especially along the Cassowary coast around Cairns, Innisfail and Tully, or maybe not so much Cairns, but definitely around Innisfail and Tully. We're going to be seeing some heavier falls there. The rainfall should peak maybe Monday evening and into early Tuesday morning. There'll be isolated heavy falls actually throughout Monday evening and into Tuesday morning, and then once again some isolated heavy falls are also possible on a Tuesday evening. The rainfall then will continue to clear off through Wednesday and pretty much clearing out through Thursday as well. So for the most part, about 5 or 6 days of persistent showers heading through here, and you can see 5-day rainfall accumulations excluding the rainfall that's going to come through today from these thunderstorms, or rather 4-day rainfall accumulations will be in excess of around 50 or 60 millimetres. This forecast is very light on the rainfall here. You can see if we check other forecast models, I think the Axis G3 is a much more reliable forecast for rainfall, and in fact it is funny how that works. The Axis G3 model is actually very reliable for rainfall up in the far north of Queensland, especially around the Cassowary coast rest, but it's a notoriously unreliable model pretty much everywhere else around Australia, so we'll use the Access G3 at least for this forecast here. Triple figure rainfall accumulations expected over that 4-day period, with those falls, like I said, being at their heaviest Monday night and then also in towards Tuesday night as well. But bringing this forecast forward towards 5-day rainfall accumulations, some pretty good stuff is expected. And as I always say with the far north of Queensland, sometimes these forecasts can be about half or even only about 30% of the rainfall that actually does fall, especially for some of the wettest of locations. So don't be surprised if your gauge picks up 250 millimetres. Not to panic anyone, there's certainly nothing in the way of significant flooding coming through, at least from this rainfall here. The river levels, I've checked pretty much all of them this morning, they're well below the minor or the moderate flooding alerts up in the far north of Queensland. So significant flooding isn't expected over the next 5 days, but it's definitely worth talking about, definitely worth the heads up here that there is going to be some rainfall worth mentioning streaming ashore. 14-day rainfall accumulations, though, you can see nothing really of interest up in the far north of Queensland. The GFS is calling for much heavier rainfall, but again, that's kind of towards the end of the forecast period by the looks of things, with some heavier falls coming through by the looks of things on Monday night and also in towards Tuesday night as well. You can see the GFS forecast really going to town with some of the falls expected there. And then much later on into the forecast period as well, I think the GFS suggests a bit of a rainfall event up in the far north of Queensland. I can't really talk about it right now because GFS has been flip-flopping on the forecast for quite a while, but certainly something we'll talk about in a future forecast update. Central and southeastern Queensland, I'm going to roll this into one part of the video because at least over the next 7 days, there's not an awful lot on the cards. In fact, out of Mackay last night, they picked up 100 millimetres from thunderstorms, certainly some heavy rainfall there, and you can see the remnants of it just offshore, soaking the Whitsundays with a bit of rainfall as well right now. Nothing crazy was reported in the way of flooding, but still some good rainfall there. Down to the southeast of Queensland, they've got some flooding concerns around Kingaroy with some significant river level heights there. In fact, there's 3 rivers currently at the major flooding alert and rising, but the pattern that they're seeing on the flooding is a little bit suspicious. It looks like the rivers or the sensors on the river, considering they're all so close together, might be acting up a little bit, but still some significant flooding is currently being experienced across some locations of the southeast of Queensland, with the rainfall not expected to die down anytime soon either. It isn't going to be heavy though. I mean, there will be a couple of showers throughout the course of today, probably about 5 or 10 millimetres across some areas into the southeast of Queensland. You can see on the convective forecast models, nothing heavy is expected from these showers here. We could see a couple of thunderstorms into the northeast of New South Wales, unlikely to be anything severe though, and a couple of showers turning into storms across the central Queensland coastline around Mackay, but again, absolutely nothing in the way of crazy rainfall expected there. These showers will continue throughout today, a couple of good storms possible around the Emerald area later tonight, and then these showers continuing through tomorrow as well, especially up into the central Queensland coastline tomorrow around Mackay. We could be seeing some light showers moving through there. Brisbane, however, looks like it's going to get a pretty dry weekend. The 4th, the 5th, and the 6th, and even out towards the 7th and 8th of January looks like they're going to be pretty much completely dry. Wednesday, the 8th of January, we'll likely see a nice severe thunderstorm outbreak across interior parts of south central Queensland and into the southeastern corner of Queensland. Still, though, we're looking about 5 days out into the future here, so a little bit uncertain, at least the forecast is, but you can see some meaty thunderstorms expected to fire up on the Eastern Bev forecast model here, especially out into the interior parts of southeastern Queensland towards the west of Toowoomba, and then around Tambo, Augathella, Charleville, Injune and Rolleston. Looks like just in this area here, some good thunderstorms are going to pop up. In terms of the conditions for these thunderstorms, it's looking okay. I mean, the convective available potential energy values are nothing to write home about, and this is why I'm a little bit kind of iffy on calling this a severe thunderstorm outbreak, because the instability in the atmosphere, it could be a lot better. Don't get me wrong, it's enough to sustain thunderstorms, but meaty severe ones, I don't think that's going to cut the mustard there. In terms of humidity values as well, I mean, mid-level values not looking too flash, the low-level values not looking awful either for these thunderstorms, and then the temperature, again, for an outbreak that I would constitute as severe, you'd be looking at temperatures probably into the high 30s, and yeah, the temperatures are getting close to that. I mean, Tambo and Augathella both expecting tops around sort of 34 and 35, but I think it just might be a little bit too cool for some of these thunderstorms to fire up, at least on Wednesday. If no thunderstorms fire up on Wednesday, then we're going to be waiting a while for the next round of severe thunderstorms by the looks of things. In fact, the rainfall continues here and there for the southeastern and the central coast of Queensland, and it only fires up again on Sunday the 12th of January, so we're looking well over 10 days out into the future now. Now, this rainfall here will be interesting. I still am a little bit unsure of it, and I'm going to talk about this in much greater detail in the coming couple of minutes, but I'm just going to give the rundown for the southeast of Queensland right now. We're expecting to see a low pressure system develop somewhere over New South Wales, Victoria, and it's going to behave a little bit like an east coast low. When I say expecting, I use that term very loosely because I still think the forecast models are kind of calling for a load of boogies at this time. I think that this forecast forecast still needs to be revised quite a lot. But what the forecast right now is suggesting is that there's going to be a strong low pressure system. It's going to drag down a lot of moisture from the north, the Coral Sea and the Pacific Ocean just in general, and that's going to create a bit of a rainfall event across eastern parts of Australia. Now, of course, it's going to give way to some thunderstorms on it both Sunday and Monday by the looks of things across the southeastern and the central regions of Queensland, and they could actually be severe across Sunday. Now, this rainfall here will turn to thunderstorms at times, but it is most likely to be heavy rainfall pretty much exclusively across the southeast of Queensland, and then continuing through Monday, and then by the looks of things clearing out Tuesday evening, not before a bit of a thunderstorm outbreak there on Tuesday evening, and pretty much completely clearing out by Wednesday morning. Rainfall accumulations are actually expected to be pretty significant across the southeastern corner of Queensland. You can see it here. This is just a 5-day outlook for rainfall, and this is right now considering what the forecasts are suggesting, with peak falls of around 150 millimetres expected, around the Brisbane area about 90 to 100 millimetres, and then outside of Chinchilla here another heavy pocket of about 100 millimetres. Now, I just want to say, take this forecast with a very heavy pinch of salt. It's a new thing on the forecast. We did see it yesterday, but the forecasts will change significantly, and we're talking about a very significant weather event here, impacting a lot of people. In fact, it will be impacting pretty much the entirety of New South Wales and Victoria, so there's half of Australia's population right there, and it is going to be dropping some significant rainfall. So again, take this forecast with a heavy pinch of salt. We're not 100% sure if it's going to happen yet. I'm certainly not 100% certain right now, and it's going to take a couple more forecasts for us to revise the details and really hone in on what is exactly expected here from this rainfall event. But just a heads up, it looks like from Saturday or Sunday onwards, when that next thunderstorm outbreak comes in for the southeast of Queensland, it's likely to be coupled with some moderate to heavy rainfall at times, or moderate to heavy showers tending to moderate rainfall at times, especially across the southeast of Queensland. I reckon kind of a triangulated area between Toowoomba, Maroochydore, down towards the Gold Coast, and then maybe inland towards Wollongong and up to about Toowoomba again. Just this little pocket here will likely pick up some significant rainfall if this weather event does come into fruition. Interesting stuff indeed. Let's zoom out to the bigger picture now and take a look at it for New South Wales and Victoria, because there's not an awful lot on the way for them, at least in the next couple of days. There could be a couple of thunderstorms along the east coast around the New South Wales area, especially tonight into the northeast of New South Wales, and then tomorrow and Sunday across interior parts of New South Wales. But take a look at this. We're likely to see this low pressure system, and it's a big one as well, developing sometime around the 10th or the 11th of January, at least for this forecast here. It's going to start off as a deep low pressure system beginning to spin itself up around the New South Wales Victoria border, outside of, or somewhere between Bendigo and Griffith, at least on this forecast here. But between other forecast models, the GFS forecast and also the Axis G3 right now, there is great model congruency, which is very rare for a system like this when we're talking about such a major weather event so far out into the future, at least for the forecast models. So this is an interesting thing here, and it's giving me a good degree of certainty that something is going to happen. I'm just not 100% sure if it's going to happen like this. Now, this low pressure system is going to act in a pretty classical manner. It's going to begin to intensify, deepen itself as well, and drag in a lot of moisture from the north. Now, this moisture here will pretty quickly turn to moderate rainfall, wrapping around on the eastern and the southeastern side of this system, and as such we'll likely see moderate rainfall spread itself across northern parts of Victoria and across interior parts of New South Wales, especially into the agricultural districts of New South Wales, extending as far up as the northern rivers by the looks of things. This low pressure system will quickly spin itself up into a big rain band, and especially as this rain band gets itself offshore from New South Wales, it's just going to funnel in a train of moisture along the coastline, wherever that impacts the coastline, whether it's normally down around Ulladulla and Wollongong. Right now it looks like it could be anywhere between sort of Newcastle and Narooma. There is a big scope of uncertainty still, but if this system can drag in a big moisture line of rainfall streaming in the shore here, we'll likely see some whopping rainfall accumulations across the southeastern corner of New South Wales. That's just a rundown of at least what this weather system is going to do. It's going to blow up in a low pressure system in typical fashion across interior parts of New South Wales and Victoria. It's going to drag in a lot of moisture from the north, and depending on if it can get itself over the water or close to the water, it will then likely drag in a lot of moisture for some unlucky location for New South Wales. And mark my words when I say unlucky, even if you're in desperate need of rainfall, you're not in desperate need of this rainfall here. This is typical, I guess, East Coast low type weather here. Of course, it's not an East Coast low because it's not even a low pressure system even remotely to the coastline at this time, but East Coast lows typically spin themselves up and then funnel a ton of rainfall ashore here somewhere along New South Wales, and like I said, it's typically along the southeastern corner of the state, and it looks like this system's going to do that here. You know exactly what I'm talking about, especially if you are in the southeast of New South Wales where you guys experience this kind of stuff. But take a look at this. 5-day rainfall accumulations, if this does materialise, are well in excess of 200 to 250 millimetres outside of Camden and Penrith, around the, I forget the name of the dam out here, outside of Sydney basically, you can see up to about 2 250 millimetres of rainfall. That's what I'd consider pretty heavy stuff here. Wollongong expecting about 150 millimetres up to about 200 millimetres, and then it's 200 millimetres right down to the border between New South Wales and Victoria. And you can see inland locations around Captain's Flat and Braidwood around sort of that 180 to 240 millimetre mark. Significant stuff indeed. Now, I'm not going into great detail with this because this is still such an uncertain factor on the forecast. I don't know if this is going to happen right now. The other forecast models are pretty, I guess, set in stone with something going to happen here, but you can see that the rainfall discrepancies are too big to kind of really talk about with great certainty. The Axis Chief is convinced that the rainfall is going to be concentrated towards the northeast of the state. The GFS is kind of looking at a bit more of an offshore pattern right now, with again the majority of the rainfall between sort of Sydney and Coffs Harbour, and then the Eastern Alert calling for the inverse of that, with the majority of the rainfall being between Newcastle down to about Malakuta. So we will have to monitor this situation very closely over the coming couple of days. I'll be able to give an accurate forecast on this probably by around Sunday or Monday, so stay tuned for that. Certainly something you want to pay attention to down in New South Wales, even if it's not with this channel here, but just keeping an eye on the weather and keeping on top of what rainfall is expected, because it will get heavy at times if this low pressure system does materialise. If I've left your head scrambled, then please let me know in the comment section down below as well. I'd be more than happy to help you out with the forecast. But apart from that, let's head out of New South Wales now and talk about the heat wave that's going to be extending across interior parts of Australia. Alright, so Western Australia now gets some much needed relief from the heat that they've just experienced. It was actually a very hot day yesterday as well. My feels like temperature at 10 o'clock was 38 degrees with that humidity. It was unbearable indeed, and I can speak for a lot of Perth people saying that was very unwelcome humidity. But let's push this forecast forward. It will be a warm day again across the southeastern corners of WA and then extending in towards South Australia. And then it's a little bit of a kind of trivia question as if you want to call this a heat wave or not. But certainly some warm temperatures expected to extend across Western Australia and then into towards South Australia as well. Adelaide looks like they're going to escape it, at least for the most part this weekend. It's going to be a little bit cooler there before that cool change sweeps through on Monday. But you can see those warm temperatures also expected to extend down in towards Victoria by Sunday. You can take a look at this. Melbourne expecting a top of 37, Bendigo a top of 38, Mildura a top of 42, so it is going to get quite warm indeed. And with these low pressure systems here, that was really going to elevate these temperatures across interior parts of Australia. Pushing the forecast even more forward, you can see it is going to just continue, at least this heat will just continue. I mean, typical for this time of the year, but a week of daytime maximum is expected to be around sort of that 43 or 45 degree mark across interior parts of WA. That's what we'd consider a low intensity heat wave through there. So if you are travelling through interior parts of WA, the Northern Territory or South Australia, make sure you've got plenty of water with you as well. You're prepared for a breakdown. You've got your satellite phones with you. It's dangerous to be moving through some of these roads at this time of the year, especially if they have had washouts lately. So I'd be careful with some of the roads across the northern parts of the sandy desert up in Western Australia around Balgo Hill and Kuakara. I'll also be pretty careful with some of the roads across the interior parts of the Northern Territory, but some of the roads there are pretty well maintained as well. Just make sure you're taking extra care with these roads as well. Tyres don't normally like it when those temperatures get above sort of 42 or 43 degrees, and those temperatures can be well in excess of that across interior parts of WA. So like I said, just make sure you're taking extra care throughout the course of this week as well. Nothing in the way of really warm temperatures by the looks of things well in towards next week. That low pressure system might actually be the saving grace before a bit of a heat wave might develop across eastern Australia. But yeah, it's that time of the year for some warm temperatures. I'm not seeing anything else really stand out apart from the usual 48, 49 degree stuff over in WA, but that's not even worth time of day considering that is so normal at this time of the year, unfortunately for them. But yeah, nothing out of the ordinary in terms of temperatures there, so make sure you are staying cool across interior parts of Australia. It looks like the capital cities though are a lot closer to normal, which is going to be very much appreciated, that's for sure. And now let's talk about tropical lows. Offshore from Western Australia, we've got one right now, tropical low 08U here, or tropical low 07U, I believe, actually developing, or I guess you could call it developing in quotation marks outside of the Cocos Keeling Islands, West Island here. It is looking a little bit better than I expected, at least this morning. It's still blowing up some convection in the sights of some really high levels of wind shear, but I mean, it doesn't really look like a pretty system. And if you play through the satellite loop here, if it is going to play through, I don't think it is, it is really, really struggling at this time. This system is not a healthy looking system. Wind shear is getting the better of this, and this is certainly a system on its last legs. I reckon it's just going to take a couple more hours for this system to get stripped pretty much bare. It will hold on at least throughout the course of this weekend, at least to some kind of remnants of its intensity, but in terms of being a tropical cyclone chance, you can pretty much cancel that right now. It doesn't look like the satellite imagery is going to load, and I don't want to bore you with a blue screen. Anyways, back to the satellite imagery, you can see that there is a little bit of convection now starting to develop along the monsoon trough in this area here south of Indonesia. Now, Now, that is not quite the precursor stuff to the next tropical low, but we will likely see something spin up there by around Monday, either a tropical low or a very weak tropical cyclone. You can see here by Tuesday we've got a full-blown tropical low towards the south of Bali here. The GFS was really fond with this system yesterday. In fact, the GFS really going to town with this system, calling for not a super powerful tropical cyclone, but a reasonably strong system skirting the coast of Western Australia, and it's now been pretty much completely cancelled. The meteorology also gave this a 25% chance, and I was actually cautiously optimistic for this system, but just with the way that it's going to be developing throughout the course of late next week, it doesn't look like it's going to have that grand of a chance of becoming at least a tropical cyclone. Certainly something worth keeping an eye on over the coming couple of days. It doesn't look like it's going to be a threat to Western Australia either, but yeah, I don't really see a tropical cyclone or a tropical cyclone future in this system at this time, at least, especially considering other forecast models just not fond of it at all. The GFS refusing to call for anything significant, at least from this system, pretty much at all, and the Axis G3 as well. Very similar story to the GFS forecast model. It's just the ECMWF that's calling for some significant stuff to potentially happen with what will become tropical low 08U. A system that I will keep my eye on, of course, but it is, like I said, no threat to Western Australia, no threat to land, and even no threat to the Cocos Keeling Islands or Christmas Island at this time, apart from a bit of rainfall here. Nothing else really interesting happening in the way of tropical cyclones over the northern parts of Australia. Western Australia, of course, being the standout producer right now for tropical cyclones, with a grand total of 1 so far this season, so it has been a stupidly slow start to the tropical cyclone season, and unfortunately it is going to continue. I guess fortunately for the Australian coastline, but there are plenty of cyclone lovers out there that would be very excited to see a couple of storms skirt the coastline, especially in the Coral Sea, a couple of storms that run away and trace the coastline. Not so much a Queensland impact, that's something we absolutely do not want, but certainly it is exciting when we see some strong systems on the radar that don't impact land, and that was what I was very much hoping for, especially in Western Australian waters at the start of cyclone season. The setup was very good for that. It doesn't look like that's going to happen now, because we are going to be heading into that dry period, I believe, towards the end of January. Anyways, that is all that I have time for today. Thank you so much for watching the video to this point. You can see my voice is starting to deteriorate rapidly now at this point of the video. Special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now. Again, I could not run their show without them, and their support is also much appreciated. But that is all for me today, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.